welcome. I'm Owen O'Sullivan from NFT News Today, and we have with us today Sebastian Quinn, co-founder of Yieldly, a highly successful DeFi platform on the Algorand Blockchain. Sebastian, you're very welcome.
Yeah, g'day, Owen. Lovely to be here. Thanks for hosting us.
Is it okay if I call you Seb?
Yes, of course.
All right. So Seb is here to talk about the exciting convergence of esports and NFTs, two industries which are really taking the world by storm and only getting bigger. So before we get into all that, Seb, can you please just tell us a bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been working in the crypto space for about 6 years now. Prior to that, I was a corporate lawyer. I spent my time, doing all manner of things from M&A and things like that in Sydney, Southeast Asia, and then into China. Left to sort of pursue the career in tech and found blockchain pretty readily after that. Very fortunate to sort of ride that first wave of sort of the ICO sort of token boom for 2017. Met some tremendous folks in the space, participated in the growth of some really awesome companies, that are all still around today, kicking goals such as Power Ledger or Bluezell as two very real examples. And then the last, year or so, or 2 years, we've been, have shifted gear to building, and have been looking at ways, or at that time, at least we were looking at ways on how we could, build more things that would matter to the ecosystem. And that was sort of the time when we found Algorand, and saw that, there's this explosion of, protocols that are looking to do things similar to Ethereum, but, all with varying differences and technological differences. So, user bases as well. And so, we thought, well, what's working quite well on Ethereum, let's see if we can replicate that and extend it in other ecosystems, and we sort of chose Algorand as our home for some work in the DeFi space. And the last 12 months has sort of just flown by in a blur of building and launching, and I guess very, very fortunate to be where we are today. I think we're still the largest staking NFT staking product on Algorand, and a very vibrant community that, as we'll go into over the course of the conversation, has led us to NFTs. So, very, very glad to be here to talk about all of that today.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll get into it all. We'll get into the Algorand blockchain as well a bit later. So we're going to get into esports. So before we get into the details, Seb, so you've got some motivation now and a lot of enthusiasm for bringing esports and NFTs together. So just briefly, where's enthusiasm coming from? And then we'll get into the details about esports potential and the potential of bringing the two together. So where's your motivation coming from right now?
Yeah, I mean, we just sort of love being on the sort of edge of disruptive industries. I think, we've always, the company that I've worked with, or Yieldly, but, the folks that I've worked with in Yieldly over the last 5 years, we've always shared that mindset. We've loved what we've been able to do in the crypto industry and see the sort of this generational change happening in terms of how, Gen Z and the millennials are rethinking, what their engagement in the digital world is. And, that you can sort of see that applying to financial, and all the kind of DeFi things that happen. But I think that's something that has sort of been under the radar for a while, but we're now seeing this sort of explosion on is that same mindset, that same kind of user group, or those same generations that are now going, let's expand. We're very comfortable digitally, so let's expand the ways that we're, doing things in that space. And NFTs, gaming and esports are sort of three of those, industries that are, all converging at this moment. And we've sort of been delighted to be able to work with, or see, this wave come through with our users. So, we've kind of been led there, through the journey with our users, and we've, been very fortunate to be able to make cool products with them now. And, I think it's very, very early on in the kind of adoption cycle, still in super early stages there. And so there's a lot of potential ahead, and that sort of again, excites us quite a lot. We can see, just see the potential for widespread adoption. So we're very keen to sort of build some sort of core products to ride that wave as well.
So Seb, let's get into that potential, as you said. So you wrote that esports is a relatively untapped industry, but like you said, with massive potential. It's touted to become worth about $1.9 billion in a few years. Viewers increasing every year, like 15% going up. So it's getting bigger, lots of potential. Seb, can you tell us why esports is poised really to become so incredibly popular?
Yeah, definitely. It's a great question. I mean, we sort of see esports as sitting as this subset to the wider trend that's happening in gaming. So the gaming industry is sort of this, you mentioned this sort of untapped behemoth, or this sort of, we kind of think of it as this sleeping behemoth. There's 400 million plus people at any given time in the world doing something related to playing, watching, or being involved in gaming in some way. Talking on Twitch, for example, about it. And so this huge audience base hasn't really been tapped in any meaningful way, by the kind of mainstream world. And it's sort of alarming. Like, one stat that always stands out to us is that the gaming space is bigger than I think it's the film, music, and entertainment industries combined. But it has nowhere near the same mind share in people's day to day. And so we sort of see that big potential in that much larger market, and then we go, what's a really addressable user base within that, or what sort of what's a subset of a group there that is particularly underserviced. And we found that the esports industry is one such subset of users that really hasn't had a lot of great products built for them. It's a very community driven industry. It's fan driven. People have been the industry exists because the fans watch love the games and then watch the people playing them. It's only now that we're starting to see this huge potential, and this huge growth, and this huge build up there. And so we sort of see that. And the other piece of the puzzle, so we've got this huge piece of the user base. The other part there is that user base has a very distinct similarity to the crypto industry user base, or the blockchain industry user base. Very similar demographic. It's digital natives, millennial Gen Zs. Typically it's people, and it's also sort of geographically dispersed. There's no real kind of differences where they are in the world. So it's sort of, it's beautifully global, sort of, egalitarian in terms of who's watching it. And that there's a big overlap there, with what's going on in the NFT space as well. And so, we know that those two user bases should be doing more together. We're starting to see the kind of green shoots of collaborations happening.
Yeah.
But it sort of still shocks us that it's, we feel like a little bit giddy that, no one else has sort of found out this secret. And so we're very keen to continue to build products, to bridge those two industries together and do it in a way that matters to the communities. Matters to the fans of esports teams, and it matters to, collectors and participants in the NFT market.
We're going to get into that fan connection a little bit later, because it's going to be really important. But with a lot of NFTs, it's that connection that is so vital for their success. But so let's get into the convergence, as you said, between esports and NFTs. How can esports use NFTs to tap into that massive audience?
Yeah, I mean, I would. Right now, there's like very easy, and sort of, there's a lot of low hanging fruit, so to speak. You've got the ability to basically memorialize any kind of key point, key kind of event that happens in an esports organization or an esports team sort of life, and memorialize that in an NFT format. Which has tremendous value to their fan base. And so you can sort of see these digital collectibles business model that makes, it makes entire sense for that industry.
Mm.
But we sort of think it goes more than that. I think, NFTs, as just generally as they're kind of conceived in the market, are still relatively analog. It's still it's still collectible, digital artworks, and we think that is a great base for adoption. And then you can start building some really fascinating products on top of that. So you can have interactivity with those NFTs, whether it's, you can have that NFT and utilize that in you as an avatar or in some sort of advertised format within what's kind of now being talked about as this sort of metaverse, where you have people being able to take their NFTs and play them, in games, take their NFTs and, participate with them in digital social settings, whether it's, social media or, Twitter and Facebook or wherever. And you're starting to see that kind of usability of NFTs is becoming much more popular or much more likely prevalent as well. And so, we know that, but, and it all comes down to this key thing that, these are tools to drive communities, and community engagement or fan engagement. So, anywhere where there's that celebritydom, there's the fandom, where there's like interest in communities, NFTs can play a part to continue to connect that, and then, expand it in ways that matter for, that are relevant to those esports organizations or gaming fans and things like that.
So, like in many sports, so there are different, maybe with esports, extra layers, but there are different entities, different players involved. Like, so the teams, the leagues, the players, the owners. In the case of esports, I guess game publishers will also be involved. So, can you tell us a bit about their involvement so far?
Yeah, I would say at the moment it's very much team driven. We're seeing that it's teams wanting to have a much more direct and meaningful connection with fans, and to create, a much more engaged sort of fan team environment. I think that's who's driving, in a big way, the direction of where esports is going. I think obviously, you've identified the other critical pieces of or players in the industry are the publishers themselves, and the leagues or tournament organizers. And we know, like at a macro level, that certain game publishers are becoming very comfortable with allowing their team or the teams participating in those, playing those games to do things with the games and actually license, NFT aspects that would potentially be licensed or be subject to license. So you can start seeing that there's an openness at the publisher level for certain games to actually, increase the ability for content to be created, increase the ability for NFTs, to be created. And, what's even more exciting, kind of what you can start to see over the horizon is how those NFTs could then be actually incorporated into the games themselves. So not that this is a real life example, but a potential world could be the Fortnite ecosystem is a huge and dynamic one. Really on the zeitgeist with building this sort of metaverse where people from dispersed internet subcultures are kind of meeting, whether it's DJs or musicians or brands, all creating kind of these sort of worlds, Fortnite. You can start to see how an NFT could be incorporated into that. You could have the NFT of your physical asset, your physical sneakers, and you could have that played by, have that worn by your avatar, in that setting, or you could have, certain skins and whatever else, that you own specifically that are NFT that get incorporated there. And so that's sort of, we know that type of thing is coming. We know game publishers are going down that path to do that. The time frame for that it's still a very open question, but it's certainly directionally that's where it's, without a doubt, that's where it will go. I think NFTs. I would say the one thing that still needs to be overcome in the industry is just people really quite understanding NFTs, understanding the software behind them or the tech behind them, and how they're sort of differentiated from, I guess, some of the things that corporates tend to fear about, crypto or tend to fear about disruptive technology. as well. So, as that industry gets more comfortable with it, we expect to see it becoming just ubiquitous and, no longer about the tech, just about the features that NFTs enable within that sort of gaming esports environment.
Sure. Yeah, it's a challenge getting the word out there, but that's what we're doing right now, and we'll keep on doing it. So the OG Sports, they're so an esports team, one of the top earning esports teams, Dota 2 champs, if I'm correct. I think those tournaments have been off for a couple of years with COVID, but
yeah, they haven't had the international for a while, so I think maybe this year. But
yeah, I will check it out. I'm looking forward to seeing that now after researching all these guys. But they dropped some NFTs as like artworks or memorabilia to celebrate, I guess, to celebrate their achievements. Can you? So it's been done. It's happening. We'll talk about what you guys are doing with Talon a little later as well. But can you tell us about that drop? Like, what were engagement levels like? Who bought the NFTs, and did you see any opportunities going forward from what they've already done?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk about it from what we know. I mean, we're not affiliated anyway with those.
Sure. Yep.
But certainly can comment what we've read publicly and seen. It was, one of the very first and certainly the biggest brand name esports organization to go down the path of issuing NFTs to their fans. And I think from, an OG perspective, it seems to, likely have been quite a, resounding success. They sold out, basically instantly, which showed that the things that they were selling, were relevant to their fans, that the fans were, engaged and very interested in them. From a, and again, I think it was, a relatively remunerative or highly remunerative to, the esports org itself. So I think that the numbers that were bandied around, that was sort of in the order of US sort of $1 million, dollars revenue that was raised through that, through that sales channel, which is not an insignificant number for a lot of esports teams. OG and the leading teams probably sit in a different mindset where that's sort of par for the course for them, getting 7-figure revenue days, but or sponsorships and things like that. But certainly for the vast majority of the industry, it demonstrates that there's a huge potential for monetizing and creating revenue streams, relevant revenue streams, with their community and fans. And so, I think those are those two things, that the things sold out, that the drop sold out extremely quickly, and that it was successfully financially, probably speaks to a nice and healthy marriage between what teams can do to create value for their fans, and also how it helps helps the teams continue to succeed and hire new players and things like that. I think it also so that's sort of how I would view it from the OG point of view, and the very specific to a team. But then what it meant for the industry was that it was, I guess, an endorsement that that NFTs are a thing that you can't ignore, right? That they are potentially more valuable to organizations than traditional jerseys and caps and other merchandise, right? That that these things when created well can have the dual benefit of incentivizing or engaging the fans, and then being very remunerative. So we know that a lot of other teams looked at that. There's been a multitude of views. I think it would be fair to say that there were certain teams in the US that took quite a had a kind of, it was a polarizing launch. There were some teams that were thought that it could have been done better, for example, and others that just loved it. So it got people talking, and it got people talking about what NFTs can do within esports. And I think that in of itself is super valuable at the industry level. And we know, like, from our business, that it was a thing that allowed or that meant that there was more teams sort of starting to talk to us and others in the space about what they could potentially do as well, which we think is extremely useful. It's an extremely useful kind of exercise in validating this as a business case or something that is valuable for the industry.
Mm-hmm. So let's go back to the fans just for a minute. So you mentioned the esports fans, they're young. They've had exposure to NFTs and cryptocurrencies, tech savvy. They're creating their own content, their own online content. So can you give us a vision of how you think esports can I guess impress these tech savvy young fans? Do you think they have to go the extra distance?
Yeah, I mean, it is. I guess it is. It's both impressive and also necessary for esports teams to do this. I mean, fans are. I mean, this generation of users in NFTs, wants to have as much touch points in the digital world as possible, and so there is an increasing. Albeit from a low base, there is an increasing competition for the digital mind space of these fans. And so, NFTs are a tool that enables that deeper connection, right? And actually, we saw this, I think, in the last, I just got pinged to me, today, but it might have been, the news might have been out for a while, but I think that Twitter was going some way to actually verifying NFTs for profile pics, for example.
That's right.
And so you can see that all of a sudden, if you're Team Liquids with millions of fans on Twitter, and then all of a sudden they have the ability, your 3 million fans have the ability to upload a verified Team Liquid, profile pic, it would seem quite unusual if you weren't, aggressively pursuing that as a way to, to demonstrate that your fans are the most loyal. And so, teams that want to go down that path, so that's what I mean by necessary. Teams will have to kind of go down that path to continue to be relevant, in all the places that their fans are, interacting with their brand and doing stuff digitally. So, it's going to be so fascinating to sort of see that dynamic play out with, that news about Twitter and then, I'm sure, all the other social media companies are looking at similar or contemplating similar things. Twitter is the notable champion of sort of crypto in the social media space at the moment. So, we can see. But coming back to what that means for teams and fans, that they will have to, we think it's imperative that they'll have to be creating this type of content and merchandise, to continue to stay relevant. And I don't see why they wouldn't.
You see opportunities for individual, so for individual players, like we've seen, like with the OG Sports drop was like more traditional memorabilia NFTs, but we've also seen examples of professional sports stars like LaMelo Ball, NBA player with the Charlotte Hornets. The way he's using, so he's created dynamic NFTs where the stats they change on the NFT as real world verifiable data comes on. The NFT gets more valuable, and he connects with with special access, VIP access, memorabilia, things like that. Do you see esports stars releasing their own NFTs in the future in maybe a similar way?
Oh yeah, I think that's entirely plausible, and I would be surprised if that's not a reality in the near term. I mean, it makes no sense why you should have fantasy league football or traditional sports, to use that term. Or I like to use legacy sports like NBA and NFL and whatnot. If they're going to be released, if there's fantasy leagues and there's fantasy leagues that are now, as you mentioned with Memo Ball, have the ability to be updating NFTs related to the success or otherwise of players. It makes no sense why that shouldn't exist within the esports world. I think one of our good friends, launched the first collectible NFT collectibles for football. So even the Crypto Strikers, launched in 2017, well before NFTs were a thing, but just because the community around football and the World Cup, was coming up at the time, so it made a lot of sense to do that. Fast forward 2 years, it seems like that was a very prescient thing that, those cards now sell for, tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars each, are coveted as collector items. And we don't see any reason why the fandom of esports shouldn't, and then the players of esports shouldn't have the same type of reaction to collectibles that relate to those players as well. So, I think that's a tremendous opportunity and an extraordinarily, low lifting that should be happening in the space. And we certainly are looking very closely at that.
Excellent. So, so Seb, Yieldly and Talon have a partnership. So this stuff is happening already. So Yieldly is Talon's blockchain partner for Esports Arena of Valor. Is that ROV?
Yeah, that's right.
So you're their partner for throughout 2021, their team's partner. So Talon is a professional esports organization based out of Hong Kong. So I just want to quote the CEO of Talon, Sean Zhang. So when he talks about how critical fan engagement is and how excited he is with their partnership with Yieldly. So he said, Yieldly will allow us to be at the bleeding edge of fan engagement and the future of gaming. So can you tell us about Yieldly's partnership with Talon, how it's going? And how are things going on the bleeding edge of fan engagement? An expression I learned from Sean, and I really like, and I will use myself in the future, the bleeding edge. So how's that going?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and the short answer is that it's going extremely well. I mean, we're couldn't be more happy with the work we're doing with Talon. I mean, their ROV team, was world champions this year, which there wasn't a lot of sport on in the world, but this was there was certainly a lot of esports happening, and we're delighted to have seen their success and be joined with them through that, and their partner through that. Sean's is a terrific CEO, and he, like I, has a background in blockchain and corporate advisory. So he comes from a mindset where not only is he an avid fan and understands esports, as good as anyone, he understands the business, of esports, and then the relatability of that with NFTs. So, he has created an organization that is predisposed to understanding and building things that matter for their fan bases. And they sort of see, and our view is the thing we share with them is that we see how critical NFTs can be in that engagement, and then just more broadly, engagement with products that manage that age group. So we met them from the DeFi point of view. We're delighted to be doing a lot more with them in introducing their fans to the DeFi projects, but also equally and probably to even a greater extent, based on everything I've said already, the usability of NFTs, with them, we're very excited to go down that path. I will say also about just using Talon as the example of a microcosm of what's going on more broadly in the esports, macro economy or macro ecosystem, is that they're in the League of Legends, which is one of the most popular games, and that publisher, I believe, has now allowed or will allow DeFi and NFT sponsors for the League of Legends League for Asia. And so that is a demonstration of that sort of trend that we talked about at the beginning, that these game publishers are starting to recognize that this is a relevant and useful business that should that shares a lot of it shares a lot of similarities with gaming, and that there is no reason that NFT sponsors or the use of NFTs would be or should be an issue. So we're starting to see that, like, that's been news in the last few months, and should be from an NFT ecosystem point of view, is an extremely positive piece, because it means that there's just this gigantic new user base that still can go and we can go and speak to about the how you can incorporate NFTs. So that's they are certainly, to come back to your new favorite phrase, they are certainly on the bleeding edge of the industry in seeing how it's changing, and then being very, very fast movers in adopting new ways for fan engagement, including NFTs.
Excellent. That's sounds really promising. So let's go on to the Algorand blockchain. So something I picked up on. So you said the Algorand blockchain is perfectly suited to power esports transition to NFTs, because the required features to navigate the space have already been baked into Algorand's layer 1 protocols. So can you tell us about this, Seb? So why is Algorand's layer 1 protocols perfectly suited for this esports NFT transition?
Yeah, I'm going to answer that in 2 parts. The first one, I'm just going to talk about why Algorand for NFTs, because I think that's worth mentioning. Because I know, we face this problem, when we go and speak to collectors of NFTs and Ethereum, or collectors in Solana, or creators. They kind of look a little bit quizzical at us and wonder, why we're doing stuff on Algorand as opposed to just pouring all the created content onto Ethereum, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And our sort of short answer is basically that it is it's faster and it is cheaper, and so you don't have, from a user point of view, you don't have these issues that we face as creators and purchasers and collectors in the space when you're buying stuff on OpenSea or elsewhere, where it can take hours or cost hundreds of dollars just to do basic things like opt-ins, name changes for your NFTs, to do the actual transactions. It can become, we've joked about it previously and made some tweets about it, but you feel that there is a huge majority of creators that don't realize that the thing that they're creating isn't so much their NFT, but they're creating a pathway for gas fees for the validators on their on Ethereum. So I want to just underscore that issue doesn't exist on Algorand, and so you have a sort of technical superiority to do a lot of things. And the way that becomes even more magnified and valuable is when you start going, well, we want to create NFTs to people who are predisposed to crypto but haven't done stuff in crypto before. And so we don't want to take a product to people in, Talon fans in Thailand, for example. We don't want to take an NFT product to that community and say, every time you touch us, it's going to cost you $100 US. It's a non-starter. There's no way you can onboard the next million, 10 million, billion users. If your product suffers that sort of debilitating deficit, or that kind of it has that thing that basically just kills it from the get-go. So it was mission critical in terms of designing or thinking. In the design, when we think through how we're going to attract users that haven't done stuff with crypto, and how we make it as seamless as possible. And so Algorand was, the benefits of Algorand availed themselves to us, and it makes it for a much less, a much easier, pathway on for non-users. And then the second thing that we're doing with Algorand to sort of, reiterate our belief in that as that it is a very, that it's a high value market or protocol to be building on, is that we're going to actually create an NFT standard that speaks to, that will allow for a lot more of the features that we know that people want, creators want, that they're, utilizing on Ethereum. So things like rarity tools or ease of distribution. we're going to create that with Algorand, and so should have a replicable product in terms of what an NFT standard is, but without any of the the cost issues or the time issues. If it can take hours for transactions to go ahead, for example. So there's a kind of a multi-step approach, but the reasons are quite sound, and basically it comes down to the fact that it will be much easier to onboard new users when they don't know that they don't know what tech is going on behind, and all they know is it's a seamless sort of costless experience to engage with it. And so we're excited for that.
Excellent. Well, Sebastian, thanks for answering all those questions about esports and Talon and Algorand. I have really one more question for you, if that's okay, and I'll let you get on with your Wednesday. So really, this question relates to the future of NFTs, and it's a question we like to ask our knowledgeable and experienced guests like yourself, Seb. So you talked a little bit about the current fanfare surrounding NFTs. Do you see the fanfare continuing? What do you think will change?
Yeah, I think we're still so early in the adoption cycle. So that there is so much room for bringing new users in. Right, we've sort of laid it out. You've got the 1 million+ users that are doing stuff in crypto at any given time, but then you've got the 400 million+ gamers doing things at any given time. So there's a long way to go to bring the value of this as an asset or a collectible, or a relevant piece of the gaming and esports ecosystem. There's a long way to go for that to become ubiquitous. And so we don't see any, there's no world that there isn't a fandom around esports. There is no world where there isn't fandom and celebrity around the gaming market. And so as long as they're strong, we see that there's no reason why NFTs shouldn't matter. We can, you talked about it, like you talked about the kind of dynamic NFT idea. Like, we're starting to see a lot more usability of NFTs, whether it's the sort of example you gave, where there's an ecosystem that's pulling on-chain pricing and data, and updating NFTs in real time to be more valuable. But then you also, what we sort of see as well, is that NFTs that start being used in in games, NFTs that start being used as part of the lived-in avatarized fan experience. I think that there is a long way to go, a long road ahead, and a very prosperous and engaged and very interesting from a technical point of view as well, way ahead. So the road is long and bright, and the fluctuations that people see in crypto that goes up and down daily kind of will sort of fade away into the background, and this will sort of stand the test of time, because the communities are strong, because the products matter.
Exciting times on the bleeding edge. Good to be here with you, Seb. That's it. Would just like to say thanks so much for joining us. You are more than welcome to come back. I'm sure we'll have plenty to follow up over the next year.
Well, it'd be cool, man. It'd be nice to once we launch, like with Talon or Boom, some of the other projects that we're esports companies are doing stuff with, to kind of just do a let you know how it went.
We'd love to know. We'd love to know, and so would our viewers. Sebastian, thanks again. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on, and we'll speak to you again in the future.
Perfect. Yeah, cheers, man.
Thanks a million. See you, Seb. Have a good day.
Yeah.